What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the PT Coffee Cast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
Doing good. We were just talking about how much we really like this coffee. So, there's that, and I'm really happy about that. Also, I can't help but notice, and, we've been commenting on your socks a lot. However, I'm going to deviate a little bit and go into these kicks.
Yeah, what do you like them?
I like these. I like the way they look.
Yeah, I've discovered I have a big problem, and that is now that I'm like really deep in the running game, I've just been buying all the shoes, and it's heavily influenced from a good friend of mine. He's also into running and loves shoes, and so he pushes his addiction on me. This is me not taking responsibility for my own actions, and then I end up following suit, and so that brings me to a new pair of shoes like more often than honestly I really should.
Yeah, this really sounds like, you know what this sounds like? It sounds a lot like it's entirely your friend's fault.
Totally. We'll go with that. But guys, we're back. We're super stoked to dive into another episode. Before we do that, though, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform so you don't miss out on any episodes. Make sure you head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see our beautiful faces, our new shoes, our socks, Will's jumpsuit today. Subscribe there. We're trying to get the YouTube channel to 500 subscribers. We're putting all of our podcast episodes there, as well as some other fun stuff that we're making through the movement. And then if you guys want to learn more about the mentorship and everything that we're doing with that, head over to the website, themovementmentorship.com. Check that out and see if it's something for you. But we'll dive into today's episode. So today's episode is driven off of a conversation between myself and Nick, who's one of our physios here at the Movement. He's also been through the Movement mentorship and has also been on this podcast. So check out his podcast episode if you want to learn more about Nick. But shout out Nick. We were having a conversation the other day, and he had brought up how he was having some good success with a client, and he felt like he had turned the corner in terms of them starting to buy in and trust what he was doing. Not that they weren't making progress, but you can always sense sometimes, I'm sure you guys have noticed this before, where clients are a little skeptical. They're not totally bought into what's going on and like if this is the right thing. And so he was pumped about it, and I asked him, what led to you feeling like you made, that next step in like building that trust. And he told me that one of the big things that drove that trust for this client was this client had gone, and I think she was doing online like training classes with a coach. And the coach in the video or in the session was using a lot of the same language that Nick was using. She was talking about the importance of building capacity, the importance of not overloading tissues too quickly, the importance of like progressive overload, a lot of the principles that Nick was using to drive the rehab process. And she had gone to Nick and said, this YouTube person was talking a lot about the same things as you, blah, blah, blah. And it made me feel really confident that like, hey, this is the right thing and that we're heading in the right direction because of the alignment in verbiage and thought between the two parties. And that fired me up, but also immediately went into my brain about how we could talk about this on the podcast, because I think there's a lot of like lessons or thoughts like within that interaction between Nick and I that I think would be important to chat about.
Yeah, and there's the other side of that scenario I think that we want to kind of talk about too, and how the opposite can kind of happen.
Yeah, and what got me so fired up about it was like it's something that we really believe in, and it's something we really put a lot of effort in, is how we communicate to our clients, in person when we're here, the language that we use, staying true to like the principles of rehab that we believe are going to take clients to where they want to go. And so it really fires me up to hear that, because we put a lot of effort into that when we communicate to the clients, but we also do a lot to put that out to the public, to talk to other community partners using those languages and explaining why we do what we do. And perpetuating the positive narratives. And I think like when I hear those stories, it gives me hope that, we're headed in the right direction in which we can really get in alignment with other healthcare professionals, because and even just physios in the same profession, because on the other side of the coin, we've all heard the opposite happen, where someone goes to another healthcare professional, or they go to a physio, or they're going to a trainer that are really noceboing and perpetuating like really shitty narratives that one conflict what maybe you're saying as a clinician that you believe is really going to push this person in the right direction, or it really like puts them in a fear-based mindset, and now they really move away from doing anything that's moving their health in a positive direction. And I feel like, unfortunately, that's more of the norm that we see a lot of times. And so when we start to have positive stories like, what Nick's talking about, and I know we've all had some positive stories as clinicians around how that can work in the opposite direction, I think it's important to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think like obviously it starts with you and your practice, and like just the way that you communicate with your clients, like making sure that you're being consistent with the main principles that you're kind of communicating, identifying like what are those consistent themes. Just to give an example, like something like progressive overload, it's just like a principle that I think we uniformly implement or try to like,
or should be implemented.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Consistently, just within our clinic, and so I think it does start with you and making sure your narratives and your communication is as consistent as you can get it, as aligns with the evidence and like what you're trying to accomplish. But it shouldn't hopefully stop there, though. I think that's something we also want to encourage.
Yeah, and I think before we do that, it's like not underestimating the importance of taking the time to educate and to communicate to the clients the principles that are going to lead them to success. Don't rush through that. Like, that is the most important piece to teaching someone how they can take control of their health or their injury, right? And I think we need to double down on that being the value that we provide as physios, so that clients can take control of that. Because if you're rushing those things, then you're not taking the time to teach them, and then that's when they can go out somewhere else and maybe they get another narrative, and like a lot of times like those other narratives stick a lot more, and then now you have this thought in your head about how like you shouldn't do this because it's like gonna destroy your back or whatever, right? And so I think not underestimating the value of those conversations and taking the time for that is super important, and then being consistent with how you communicate that language to your client.
That's a good point, and I think I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not just like helping them with their pain, right? It's like something like, if we just take progressive overload, that's just something that is really important for that person's health going forward. And taking the time to talk about that, it might seem like maybe it's not super related to their like injury or pain, maybe if it's like better, right? But talking about like, hey, as you maybe step away from the clinic and you're out there in the world, deciding what you want to do with your health and fitness, like, remember that things need to get harder over time. Like, you should be pushing yourself gradually more and more. And it can be a simple conversation like that, around progressive overload and variability, that are simple concepts to us, but maybe not as simple to somebody else. And then in the hopes that what's going to happen is they're going to then go to another place and be told the same thing, and then hopefully carry that forward.
Right, and that's the key of like building confidence, and how we really, as a healthcare profession, and like beyond physio into training, whatever, it's like it's how we really start having a big positive impact on people's lives and avoiding some of those like negative cycles that people can get into. And I think that like transitions to the next point of like, it's also important for us as clinicians to be building these relationships with other healthcare providers, whether that be trainers, run coaches, CrossFit coaches, chiropractors, massage therapists, like dietitians, whatever it may be, like building relationships with them and talking with them about our approach to care and sharing with them our perspectives, they're sharing with their perspectives with us, and we try to come to a common understanding of like, hey, this is the principles that, you know, we're focusing on, and this is how we communicate it, that way that everyone's starting to have this mindset of how they're communicating to their clients, so that the messaging is consistent when you go from here to here to here to here, as consistent as possible, right? Because one of the biggest struggles I know I've heard from clients is like, there's so many schools of thought, there's so much information out there, which I think I always look at that as a blessing. A lot of people will take it in another way. They think that it's a negative that there's so much information out there, the social media, which I think to a degree that can happen, but I always look at it in a positive light, that it really opens up the realm of opportunity for people to explore and learn and find the right people. But with that comes, I think, responsibility on, you know, our end to be promoting and putting out the principles and the content that we believe is going to really help people. And I think that's how we have that like general shift. And I do believe like that is happening. Like this is an example with Nick's client that gives me hope. And that's why I think I was so fired up about it.
And I think, you know, to kind of add to this, I think a lot of, you know, I'm just going to pick on like our profession a little bit. I think a lot of physios are so focused on some details that ultimately don't matter that much for people's health. And people have different opinions, you know, on like, you know, should you train with like a rounded back during a deadlift or a straight back? And it's like, it's good for us to have those conversations, but those differences, those minor differences, can't talk, shouldn't limit you from being able to have common ground with other people on the really important stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, lifting weights is not bad for you. It's actually healthy for you. Right. That's a huge thing. If you can just align on that, you're good, right? Don't worry about the other stuff. If they come up and you have the conversations and you can have those without like, you know, getting in major disagreements, I think those are good things, right? But that's not the important thing. The important thing is like you want people not spreading overtly wrong, harmful narratives, right? And you want to send your clients to places where they're going to be like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to build up the weights gradually. Yeah. And guess what? You can lift weights even though you're 60 years old. Yeah. Those are the important things, because if someone goes to a place and they get told the opposite, that can take years off their life. Yeah. Those are things that we need to be like being really consistent with and getting aligned with the people that share those messages. Mm-hmm. I think that's like, you know, less worry about the fringe, more worry about the big health things we know are going to like extend people's lifespan and improve their quality of life. Cardio, progressive weight training, mm-hmm. right? Better sleep habits, good quality nutrition, you know, the basics.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. I agree. And I think like it starts by each individual clinician taking responsibility and ownership for delivering those type of principles and messages to the best of their ability to the people in front of them. And that's how change happens. And, you know, I think there's a place for social media, and there's a place for, you know, calling out and holding a standard. Like I do believe that there is a place for that, and I think it's a good thing that we have that in the profession. It can obviously go way too far, and that's really annoying to me. But I think ultimately if someone's sitting here listening to podcasts being like, well, how do I have this impact? It's like everyone thinks they need to go become viral on Instagram and have all these followers. It's like, no. It's like you just start doing that with the people in front of you in the community that you're in, and that will compound. And that's always been our approach. It's like we really want to have an impact on this profession because we're passionate about it. Our vision is to change the way people view and consume healthcare, right? So how do you do that? That can be very overwhelming. It's like, how we do that is we just start doing that every single day as we practice, and then every single day with the community that we're in, and then the community partners around us, and then we take that to social media and we use our platforms as a way to spread that message. We have ways to talk to people about how this has been successful for us, and that's how you start to have those things compound. And if every person who's an individual clinician starts to do that on their own, that's how you have a big change. And I think, like, to your point, we get so caught up in like, this is the right way, and when we should just be focusing on like a select few of principles that I would imagine pretty much every clinician would agree upon. Those are the important things that like we need to do to help someone improve their health, and then we just deliver on that. And I think it's happening. This conversation between Nick and I makes me happy about it. It's like positive. It's headed in the right direction. But I think we just need to continue to double down on that. And I think we talked about this before, but just switch our mindset as physios and as clinicians around what our value is and the impact that we can have on people. And I think it's around those things that we just talked about, not around, hey, I can reduce your knee pain for you.
Exactly.
Which you can by proxy of doing the other things that are going to help people take control of their health. And how we deliver that is through education, exercise focus, because we know that impacts people's health. Like those two things are at the base of it.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think
that's it.
Pretty much it, right?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, cool.
That was off of 3 coffees, so
yeah,
so we're good.
I'm gonna get this while you're kind of wrapping up here. I'm gonna get the thumbnail live.
Oh wow, okay.
Video, okay.
All right, guys, that's all we got for today. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you head over to our podcast platforms and subscribe. That way you don't miss out on any episode. Make sure you head over to YouTube so you can see live Will take a thumbnail of me for this episode. We're trying to get our YouTube channel up to 500 subscribers in 2024. So if you want to head over there, subscribe so you don't miss out on any podcast video episode, as well as some other fun content that we're going to put out there over the course of the year. And then lastly, the Movement Mentorship. If you want to learn more about the mentorship, head over to our website, themovementmentorship.com. You can check that out. There's a free downloadable piece of content there about how you can create an epic plan for your clients. You can schedule a call there if you want to talk to me about the mentorship, see if it's a good fit. But that's all we got for today, guys. As always, stay caffeinated. Peace. Nice.
That's good.
That's good.